In the tapestry of life, where every thread holds a story, America in Black and White emerges as a haven for the voices echoing through the heart of our communities. In this podcast, we wade through the rivers of our collective experiences, celebrating the vibrant hues of change brought forth by the whispers of hope and the roars of action. It's more than just a conversation. It's a journey into the heart of our society, illuminated by the light of those daring to dream and do. Join us, and let your voice be the melody that guides us toward a dawn where every color finds its place in the masterpiece of our shared destiny. Together, let's paint a future brimming with the positives that dwell in our minds and the actions that shape our world.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of America in Black and White, where we are coloring conversations on the canvas of America. Tonight, our special guest is Mr. Alexander R. Stewart. My name is Sergeant First Class Alexander R. Stewart, and I am currently serving at Presidio of Monterey, California. So far in my career, I have served through 3 separate combat deployments that include tours to Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria. Throughout my time in the service, I have seen many terrible things and have dealt with the aftermath of experiencing those things. I personally understand the internal struggle that those around us cannot see, and thus I wrote this collection of poems within the book Unspoken Words, the thoughts of a soldier in order to help veterans and active members of the military understand their emotions and potentially deal with them in their own way through my words. I also wanted to create something that would help those that have never served understand military members a little better, thus bridging the gap between military and civilians. The book allows a military spouse, child, parent, or friends to see the world through the eyes of a soldier. Through the words within the poetry, they get to see what we've seen, experience what we've experienced, and learn to understand why the mind of a military member is the way that it is, or why military members act the way that they act. I also wrote the book to show all military personnel that there are people out there who understand what they're going through and that it is okay to not be okay. I hope that those who are struggling but cannot find the words to describe what they're going through can find solace and comfort in my words and potentially become encouraged to seek help. The poetry within the book covers issues related to post-traumatic stress disorder and some of the causations behind its development for soldiers. The book also has a number of funny, motivational, and patriotic poems as well that are geared more towards providing readers with a whimsical look at some of the events soldiers deal with, such as a spouse cheating on a soldier while they're fighting overseas. Eventually, through working with the military's behavioral health realm and chaplain corps, I want to possibly be able to provide any military personnel who are struggling with PTSD or other issues with copies for free when they visit those outlets of treatment. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to bring to the show Mr. Alexander. Hello, sir.
How you doing, Mr. King?
How are you today? Good to have you here on the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm doing fantastic.
So, before we dive into the show, are there anything you'd like to say to the audience before we get going?
Oh, well, it's a pleasure to be here. I always love to get the opportunity to speak to anybody who's willing to listen, because really, in this realm of work, it's only effective if you have an audience or a group of people that care enough to hear what has to be said. And if there is no one to hear what has to be said, then kind of like the title of my book, the words go unspoken. And if the words go unspoken, nothing ever changes. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I appreciate anybody who took the time out of their day to hear what has to be said.
Well, I thank you so very kindly, and I want to jump right into the mental health advocacy, because I think this is one of the things that first caught me, when not just chatting with you, but when I was looking at your profile there on LinkedIn. Can you tell us what inspired you to become a mental health advocate?
Oh, of course. So over my time in the military, I ended up losing about 37 people I've served with, or I've, served around or been in the same units, to suicide. And almost twice that number have at least attempted. And over the course of my career, I personally suffered with mental health as well, just not knowing what it was, as it occurred. With every deployment, when I got home, yes, of course, you're not going to be exactly the same. So I assumed that it was just, natural that I felt a certain way. And every time I'd come home, I would react a different way to certain things. And as it progressed, as I went on another deployment and another deployment, those small things that I thought were a little quirky turned into something way more severe. And when I finally decided to seek help for myself in 2017, I was essentially rejected from the health personnel at Fort Hood, Texas at the time, because that base is so large and their ability to treat patients is so limited that at that time they were strictly focused on treating severe patients, patients with severe post-traumatic stress disorder, patients that were immediate risk to either themselves or others. And as for the rest of us, we were kind of just told we were low risk. We seemed to have our stuff together. As long as you had something in place, to protect yourself, make sure that you weren't going to hurt yourself, hurt others. They kind of just said, if it gets worse, come back, which of course, is not what you want to hear. A couple years later, I tried again, and I had lost my brother in September of 2022 to suicide. And that's not included with the number of the 37 others. And when that had happened, I had realized that all of the things that were bothering me over time had finally fully formed into something where when I got the news that my brother passed away, I felt almost nothing.
Oh, wow.
Kind of terrified me. Of course, service members and veterans, we have a tendency to utilize detachment to kind of deal with things because you have to in the moment overseas. You can't really allow yourself time to process certain things that happen. So over time, what I think had happened with me is I had become so reliant on detachment that I just had completely detached myself from everything that was happening. And something as catastrophic as losing a brother who was less than a year younger than me, and I was super close with growing up, that should have affected me in a way that it didn't at the time. So I got back from a specific training I was doing with the military, and that is where I found out about my brother and came home. And I had an activating event at my home that pushed me over the edge. I have a dog. He's still downstairs. He's still fine. But at the time, he had bit my wife. We don't know why, but he had drawn blood, and she was screaming. And out of just blind reaction, I hurt the dog severely.
Mhm.
And I didn't know what I had done. I only really came back to like a self-awareness state of mind from hearing my wife going from screaming about how her hand was bleeding and how much her hand hurt to like hearing what did you do with very very dramatic crying and a lot of screaming. And then that's when I had saw that my dog now was across the room and had blood dripping from his mouth and was just in shock. So what I had did at that moment, this is about 5 years after I tried to seek help that first time and was told to leave, I got back in the car and I drove immediately to the behavioral health clinic that was on that post at the time, which was Fort Benning. I walked into the clinic and I told them years ago I had been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, but I was low risk. And then I told them at this point in time, I do not believe I am low risk. I am terrified. And they tried to brush me off again and tried to say like they couldn't see me right now unless I'm going to hurt myself. And I
Oh,
told them I'm not gonna hurt myself, but like get me somebody or we might have a problem. And it came to the point where basically I had to just start threatening people just so I could get somebody to sit down and talk to me. 'Cause I'm not going home. So either I'm going to fight you or I'm going to see somebody. That's the only two options here. And fast forward, I went through the whole process. It took me from when I did my intake in 2022. It took me 6 months to fully get started on treatment from the day of that event until I actually got my official doctor. In those 6 months in between, I did an intake with a civilian. I did an intake with a doctor who was leaving, so I had to come back and do another intake with a different doctor. And before we can even get started, the first doctor had put down that I had, what was it? So I heard voices and I saw shapes, which means that they put down that I had psychosis. So now the second doctor I got to in this 6 month period was informing me that this doctor put that in the system without telling me, and I never said that, and initiated a medical evaluation board for me. So that instead of addressing the issue and getting treated, I had to then switch gears and get that off the record because it wasn't accurate and it wasn't true, and get them to back off of the MEB process. And then after the 6 month period, I finally was able to start, talking to somebody. All of these things, right? With the getting rejected in 2017, with the fact that it took 6 months for me to sit down with a doctor, and then all of the stigma and everything you hear in between from others that are telling you, hey, man, you're fine, just suck it up. It really just drove me to start being a voice and do the unpopular thing. Come out here as an active duty service member and just voice my opinion and my experience on what happened, because I don't think that's how it should happen. Talk about the stigma, tell people that the system's not working, and we need to fix it. And then also encourage those who are struggling, even though the system doesn't quite work, to at least still go out there and try, to get what they need.
Wow. And so just with that, all of that, because that's a lot, especially for a young man like yourself. I find it amazing that you actually got the strength, to actually turn this around, to put yourself into a situation to where you want to help others. So have you always been that type of person, or did something change within everything within you to bring you to this point?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. I've never been asked that before. I've actually always been this way. So my father, my grandfather, they were all service members. My grandfather was in, my father and his 6 brothers were all in. Some of my aunts from my dad's side were in the service. And then in my family, at least on my dad's side, you are either in the military or you're a policeman or you're a fireman. It's kind of just in the blood. We've always been people that want to help other people because we have the ability to do so. And then on top of that, my father was a professional boxer. So at a very young age, I was taught how to defend myself with the, lessons and teachings to only defend myself if I have to. But at the same time, always protect those who can't defend themselves. And then growing up, my youngest brother, who is still with us, he had autism, or still does. He has autism. So I was always kind of, a shadow behind him, protecting him from people, because this is, early 90s, people that were picking on him for being different and all of these other things. So I kind of always had that. And I was always that kid growing up too, that I didn't need to know who you are. But if I saw somebody messing with someone else and there was a big, gap in size or something, I was always the person to step in. And over time, from me repeatedly doing that or just defending myself because of where I grew up, it got to a point where if I said something to somebody, everything stopped, because they knew that if I'm saying, hey, I want you to stop now, it was either you stop or you don't have to worry about who you were messing with anymore. I'm getting involved. And it's always been that way. And I think that's one of the reasons why I've always wanted to serve in the military. It was either that or become a police officer. So I kind of just always had that mentality since I was like 5, 6, 7 years old. And it just kind of stuck. And I don't see a difference between then and now, because when you put the uniform on, right, any uniform from any branch, once you put that on, anyone else who wears the same uniform as you is somebody that you give your life for. So I don't have to give my life for them in this situation. I just have to be willing to openly talk about the things that, bother me, my vulnerabilities, to help others. And I see that as a very, very easy task to do, considering, the cost of if I don't, or, the benefits of if I do speak it, and maybe it helps somebody.
So how do you define mental resilience in today's climate?
I think that mental resilience it's really hard to define it as a specific thing. It's going to come in different ways for everybody. There's going to be some underlying factors. The 3 factors that I always talk to people about is knowing the 3 W's is what I call them. The why, the who, and the what. And what those are, for me at least, and what I think it should be for a lot of people, is why. Like, what is the reason why you get up in the morning? Why do you get out of bed even when you absolutely do not want to? You don't want to go to work. You don't want to. Why is it that you will do it no matter what? For me, of course, it's my children, my family, and as a service member, especially as a senior leader, I've always said that if I don't get out of bed and I don't go to work and I don't pass on the knowledge learned from 3 deployments worth of stuff, from all the experience that I have, if I don't give the service members underneath me 110% in everything, even if they think it's a little much, then at some point when they leave, they might get into a situation where something that I had known or I could have taught them might have been the deciding factor of whether or not they make it home. And I tell myself all the time that even if that's such a, far-fetched idea, I would not be able to go to sleep at night. I would not be able to live with myself knowing like, hey, you could have made a difference in this situation because you've dealt with the situation, or you know how to get out of it. And you knew this person and you didn't pass that on to them. And that's kind of been a big why for me. That's what's driven me no matter what, because I'm going to give 110% as a service member and as a leader, right? Even as a father and a husband, because that's what everyone else around me deserves. Do I get it back? Is it reciprocated? That's a whole nother story we can get into. But for me, that is the reason why I'm going to get out of bed. And when it comes to, the concepts of who you are, and this is really the thing for resiliency, is understanding who you are at your core, right? The things that make you, you. For me, right, everyone thinks when you say like, who are you? It's my name, or I'm from this place. No, they're base core values, like things that you are willing to die on a hill for. For me, I'm a father, I'm a leader, I'm a warrior, I'm a friend, an uncle, and it's stuff like that. And it just stacks and stacks and stacks. But these things make me who I am. And if you know why it is you get up in the morning and you know who it is you are at your core, I always tell anybody, you don't need to know the 3rd W, but with those 2 things, there isn't a single thing that's going to get thrown at you during the day that would ever stop you from getting after what you need to do, because you know who you are and you know why you're here. So you could tell me that what I'm doing is impossible. You could tell me it's going to take this long, that long. I'm going to need these objects or whatever. It doesn't matter. I'm going to get it done. And then the last thing I always tell service members, especially when I was a drill sergeant, was the what. What is at stake if I give up? What is at stake if I don't go out there? And I know I'm bouncing around with this, but resiliency is so hard. And to at least to find, because I could tell you all the time, it's the ability to bounce back from adversity, right? The military has briefs about that over and over. But what does that mean? And for me, at least, I believe that someone can tell you all day that, you need to bounce back from this. You need to, basically they're telling you to tough it out. But that's one way. But for me, I think if you look at it a different way and you understand those three concepts of why it is I got out of the bed today, who I am at my core, right? Ain't no one going to tell me who I am. I know who I am. And then what's going to happen if I do give up, if I do walk away, if I don't do what I needed to do, right? For me, my family would be homeless, right? A service member could die because I didn't train them the way I was supposed to train them. Or, who's going to do my job if I don't get up and do it in the morning? Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what job you're in. If you tell yourself like, I don't matter at work, you're lying, because nobody can do the job that you do specifically better than you, because nobody is you but you. If you know those three things, I really do believe that that's a better mindset to go after and do things than just, telling somebody, be, as the military will say, be the bouncy ball, not the egg, and exactly. And that's the same thing that I always do when they say that. It's like, cool, what does that mean? And what I like to do is they'll do that brief. And then especially as a drill sergeant, because, you have these young minds, I used to always love being able to sit there and go, all right, now listen, that was great stuff that he said. Now throw all that out and then understand these three things. And it's good to know and understand also, you might not know those three things. You might not have that answer now. Good. That's fine. I tell everybody, especially for anyone who's young and growing, like in their early 20s, your brain doesn't finish developing for males until you're 27, 28, for females, 25, 26. So if you don't know who you are, that's perfectly fine, because you are not you yet. You are going to change. Your why is going to change as you mature, as you grow. It's going to change, right? The what's usually always there. But what I also tell people too, with all of that, is whenever you're dealing with adversity, whenever you're trying to accomplish something, you need to make sure that whatever it is that's motivating you to do it is not something external. It cannot be an external reward. It has to be an internal reward, because external rewards are only good enough if the reward outweighs the work. After that, it's gone. I always tell people, make sure you have something inside you that drives you. Do it for you. Do it because it makes you feel good. Do it because you feel like it needs to be done. If you can do that, if you can keep those 3 W's in your mind as you're going about things and you start hitting that adversity, for me, that is what I think modern resilience should be, at least personally in my case.
What barriers do you see in Black communities when it comes to mental health?
That's all right. Yeah. So I would probably start with the first fact is that if we're going back generation to generation, Black men, right? Men in general, but Black men are seen in 2 ways, right? And we all know what the 2 ways are. You're either, I always make a joke. I don't know if people have seen it, but Boys in the Hood, I always say. And that's a very old movie. I know. But the father from Boys in the Hood versus, the other side of that. And that's sadly, that's how people are viewed. And it's a terrible stereotype. So with that being said, though, if you are viewed either way, there is this stigma, just like there is everywhere else, that you are supposed to be this rock solid, tough, person that everyone else can lean on, that, shows no pain, and you're not allowed to sit there and, struggle with something. You have to just keep going. And then if you're talking, especially in the Black community, when I grew up, where I was from was not predominantly Black. And like every single day, even people that called themselves my closest friends would just make all of these references that, like, I had dudes call me token. I had dudes call me, I frosted my hair in the 90s, because I wanted to be like everybody else. And they called me Mr. Freeze, but they dropped the N-word on the front of it instead of Mr. Freeze. And like, these are supposed to be people that were friends of mine. right? But also at the same time, growing up, right? Because your parents went through it, your father went through it, other people. If you start complaining about it, they'll be like, "Hey, it happens. Toughen up."
Right.
Don't show them that it bothers you, and you have that seared into your brain at such a young age. When you get older, right? That standard is so much higher, especially if you get into like that father figure area, or spouse or significant other, because now you're supposed to be this symbol of strength and composure, but in reality, you're still a human being. Everybody has emotions, everybody processes something, and when it comes to men, and then especially black men, nobody really takes the time to ask, "Hey, how are you doing?"
Yep.
Right? Are you all right? And if you do say something, right, even like family and stuff, usually your family will just tell you, "Quit being a baby, quit whining." And it's life. Life is hard, and that's just how it is, and that's just the community. And I understand it too, and I'm sure you do, because over the time, with everything that has been happening over years, with racism, slavery, all this other things, these generations had to do that. It was a survival. But now we're at a time where we could and we should be able to speak out and seek help, because suicide rates for men are extremely, extremely, extremely high. And then suicide rates for black men are even higher. And if we would stop, like us as a community, stop that stigma and start encouraging people like, "Hey man, it's fine. It's okay. You can be, hurting right now. You can be." And I'm very grateful, because my father, very, very, very tough man when he was young. I think he had a realization too later on in life, and he started showing his emotions a lot more. And it's kind of been an encouraging thing to me, because as a young black kid, your father is going to be a figure, because nobody's really going to understand, especially as a young black male, what you're going through than the person who literally went through it, that's in your family. And so you kind of, a lot of us lean on our fathers for guidance, for kind of a model to follow. So being able to see that was good for me, because I was able to, okay, well, he's doing it, so if he's doing it, I can do it. But I really do believe that in our specific community, that stigma is twice as bad, right? And it's because, one, the culture over decades of just having to bite the lip and take what was coming, and just otherwise trouble, or worse, sometimes death. So it was just learned to just be silent and deal with it.
Wow. So let me just ask you this, because being a young man like yourself, I mean, you've shown lots and lots of resilience, and I can see that the leadership is also very strong. But in said situation like that, I mean, did you feel like there was a load that you had to carry in order to just make it through the day, make it through life? Or how did that turn out for you? Or what were some of the things that you was feeling and experiencing when you would hear, yourself being told to just suck it up?
Oh, yeah. So personally, I always tell everybody, so even though I'm here right now and I'm having this conversation with you, and I advocate for mental health, and I try to go out there and talk, motivation and other things, there isn't a single day where I'm not struggling too. And anybody who tells you, "Yeah, I was struggling, but now I'm not, and I'm good," they're lying, because it never really goes away, especially when you talk about like post-traumatic stress. You don't really learn, well, you don't get rid of it. You just learn how to live with it, right? And at the same time, not allow it to, take over who you are,
Right.
and kind of just you just control, the whole situation. You control, it's your life. But I will say, I've almost 6 or 7 times in my life while I was in the service, never before, I contemplated ending my life. And it was a lot of those situations, right? There's a giant stigma in the military. You get into situations where, you're struggling at home with family, and then you're struggling at work. I was never a service member who ever had an issue at work. I was always the person that got promoted to the next rank as fast as possible. I used to do all the competitions, so like you wouldn't really be able to see it. But that burden was definitely there. And what I did, and what a lot of us do, a lot of men and a lot of service members, men, women, we tend to hide that burden and that struggle in chaos. And what I mean by that is we keep ourselves busy, and we keep a new task, a new task, a new task, a new task. And that way, there's never that lull, and that I call it like the silence or the dark. There's never that period where you have nothing going on. Because if you've ever buried those burdens and struggles, then when you run out of stuff and there is nothing but you and silence, all of it will start slowly leaking out.
Yep. You're 500% right about that. Definitely 500% right about that. So, like, as the people in the audience that are listening right now, what are some of the things that you suggest that they be able to do in having members that, one, struggle with mental health, but those that are military veterans that may be struggling with PTSD? What are some of the things you would want them to understand and maybe try to do to make things a little bit better?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The first thing would be, as the community of veterans, service members, first responders, we need to stop telling people that have actually like been through stuff that they're messed up. They're not. Something I always tell people, especially like if you're talking to your combat guys, it is not natural for someone to take the life of someone else, regardless of the situation. And every time you do, you kill off a little bit of yourself, no matter what you tell yourself or what you say. So I think it's so ignorant that people within the military community and the veteran community will tell each other, hey, man, suck it up. Don't be a baby. Don't do this. That needs to go away. Because what's the difference between me doing PT every day and running and push-ups to stay physically fit and me making sure my headspace is right? Is that not also just health and fitness? Is that not the same thing? Why do we focus so much on shooting rifles and running and push-ups and strength and all this training, but we spend almost no time on getting the headspace correct? I don't get it. We'll shove as much information in there as possible. We'll send you to every school that'll benefit in combat and war, but we will not let you pause to make sure that your head is right to keep going. And it just absolutely makes zero sense. And my thing would be, if I'm talking to anybody who's, EMT, EMS, police, fireman, military, veteran, whatever have you, we need to stop doing that. Because there is no difference between someone wanting to stay physically fit and someone wanting to stay mentally fit. I mean, the military's acknowledged that by creating like the resiliency program. But, the resiliency program is a program where once a year we get in front of people and talk about one of the 14 pillars. And we only talk to you for an hour. And it's just to check the block. And we're not taking it serious. And you don't see that person again for a year. But they say, hey, if you need help, you can go here. And no one ever does. No one wants to take that card, right? No one wants to get that contact number. No one wants to be seen in front of their peers, like saying, hey, I need to go get help. Because once you do, everybody who's been in any kind of job that is in these high intensity positions knows you get benched, and no one wants to be benched because your job is, especially if you're a first responder or military, is your identity. It really is. You spent the last however many years doing this job. That is who you are. So to seek help so that way you can keep doing what you're doing, but then be told like, hey, we're going to pull you so you can, it's just detrimental. And that's all based on that stigma. Now,
Well, we got a comment here. From Walter. He says that he was in the community, as you were mentioning earlier. He says always told to show no emotion, allowing these emotions to fester on top of compounding berating from peers, outsiders is a recipe for disaster. What do you think about that?
oh, absolutely. I always tell everyone when I go and talk to people is we can address the stuff now, right? As we say in the military, 50-meter target, it's right there. We can address it now, or you can do what everyone else is telling you to do and pack it away. And this goes back to what I was saying before, where you just keep yourself busy and you ignore it and you ignore it and you ignore it. And then finally, when you're stuck by yourself, even though you don't want to be, because it's going to happen. Eventually, it'll happen. As much as you think you can just keep ignoring things, the longer you wait, the more you compound it, the bigger and badder it's going to leak out. And it's not going to leak out in little tiny, bits and pieces. All of it's going to come for you at once, 1,000 times harder than it would have done if you just addressed it to begin with. And that is that very, very dangerous spot in anybody's life where it happens, and that's where we lose most people. That's where most suicides occur. It's not like oh, I just want to do this thing. It is somebody who was struggling, who sought help, who was ignored, who was told that they're fine, who was told to suck it up, who was told, oh, men don't feel that way, or, oh, you don't feel, and you just kept going and you kept going. 'Cause that's what everyone told you to do, or that's what you had to do for the people around you.
Mm-hmm.
And because you did that, because you kept going, because you kept pushing, it just got worse and it got worse. And then, one thing got added on top of another thing, got added on top of another thing. And then once you got into that dangerous spot where you ran out of things to do and you don't even mean to do it, just things start leaking out of your mind. And that's happened to me. I had a very similar situation. After 3 deployments, I found myself in the dark, on the floor, in a laundry room with a bottle of whiskey and a giant knife. And I was sitting there drinking the whiskey, listening to The Sound of Silence by Disturbed on repeat, don't know why. And I was contemplating pushing that Bowie knife through my chest. And nothing had happened that day. Nothing had happened for a while. But what happened was, because I ignored it, because when I went to go seek help back in 2017, I was told no, essentially. And then I ignored it in 2013. I ignored it in 14. I ignored it in 15. And all of it just started coming for me at once. And it was just a bunch of different things, memories of situations that had happened, things or people that made me feel like, I wasn't good enough, or I wasn't this, or I wasn't that, or, and it all just kind of poured out. And because it poured out, it put me in that dangerous scenario where I didn't see the other side. All I could see was all of this darkness that I had in my head this whole time, slowly coming out and just messing with me and telling me this and telling me that. And then, when every bad thought in your head for the last however long you've been holding it in comes at you all at once, it is very, very difficult for you to tell yourself, the positive side and pull yourself back out, because it's not other people now. Even if it was originally, all of these thoughts are coming directly from you. You are telling yourself this. So now you're battling yourself, and we are our own worst enemy, right? Who are we going to believe more than us? Nobody, right? If it's coming from us, we're going to believe us because it's coming from us. It might not even be true. Your mind just might have warped something. to make it that way, or maybe all of these things together made it all warp into another thing. Now everything's your fault, even if it has nothing to do with you. And now you have to play that game where you're trying to crawl back out from an argument essentially with yourself, and then all of your own internal struggles.
Let's transition over to your work as an author. And I really love the creativity that you have, because when you wrote this book of poems, and looking at some of the ones that I do have here, I found it to be more than interesting. So tell us, though, what was the emotional catalyst behind your first book?
I would probably have to go back to that scenario with the dog and my wife. Because up until that point, I kept lying to myself and saying that I was fine. And once I went and was seen, or tried to be seen after that scenario, and that 6-month lull happened, that is where somehow, I was drawn back to writing poetry. And I think in a way it was my brother pushing me back that way. My brother, who passed away in 2022, he and I used to write music together. And when he passed, I put my guitar away and I didn't touch it. And I was taking a college course where someone had asked me to write a poem based off of like one of my favorite poems. And my favorite poem of all time, it's a poem called Dulce et Decorum Est. It's a World War I poem, very popular amongst military members, but it talks about the horrors of mustard gas and somebody watching another guy basically drown and die from gas. And I created the poem Alarm from that, from the college project, and I submitted it. But for some reason, I don't know, I decided to hand my spouse the poem. I was like, hey, can you just look at this for, my grade? Let me know what you think. And she read it. And for the first time ever in 10 years of being together while I was in the service, my spouse broke down crying and looked at me and had asked, is this just a poem, or is this how you feel? And I looked at her and I said, that it's how I feel. It's how I've felt for years. And I've been trying to tell people, and nobody listens. Nobody understands. And in that moment, the not sympathy, but the empathy that was created by the poetry, and I had felt for the first time ever, was something that pulled me out of like one of the darkest places I'd ever been in my life. And then I don't know what drove me to keep writing, but I had this feeling like, hey, if I could do this with one from now on until I can get to see a doctor, anytime one of these things leaks out of my head, I'm going to write down what's going on. And I did that over and over and over again. And it was therapeutic for me too. As the pencil hit the paper and the words just flew out, I felt like a burden finally was lifting off of me. And then what I would do every time is I would write it, and then I would take it to my spouse. And I said, read this one. And every single time it was the same reaction. It wasn't like, people fake sympathy all the time. It wasn't one of those things where like, she's like, oh, I cried the first time, it's whatever. Every single time it struck a nerve, and then she would sit there and talk. But I think the biggest catalyst, as you said, is maybe not the event that started it, but realizing that level of empathy, which is the big thing that I would tell any civilian or someone who has somebody who's hurting, who's trying to understand what's going on, is sympathy is not going to help anything. And no one wants to hear that you feel bad for them, especially not like a grown man. No man, or or service member, right? No
Right.
adult wants anybody, doesn't matter what the gender is, no adult wants someone to go, oh, I'm so sorry you're going through that. It's your first thought is like, hey, like F you. All right. Like, I don't need you, your sympathy. I'm fine.
Mm-hmm.
However, if you can take that sympathy and switch it to actual genuine understanding of your emotions and your mind state,
Mm-hmm.
it can be a powerful tool, because now for the first time, these people that have been bottling it up, these people that have just been compounding and compounding, they are now seen and they're heard in the first time in however many years they felt that they were unseen and unheard, and nobody cared.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to feel that with my spouse, for me writing, I decided, let me put these together and let me do whatever I can do, whether I have to publish it myself or I can get a publisher to publish it, to get these out. And I don't care if I never make $1. I want to put this in the hands of other people because,
Mm-hmm.
like I said, I wrote music when I was young. So yes, I have a gift to, and I can put words on paper and make them flow and make them sound good. Some people cannot find the words to describe what they're feeling or what they're going through, because sometimes that pain is so deep and so broad that to pinpoint it to a single set of words is just not, it's just not fathomable.
So you one of the pieces that I'm looking at, or was that I got a chance to go through and read, is intrusive thoughts, unwanted guests. Tell us about that. That's a really interesting piece there that you wrote.
So the whole concept of intrusive thoughts, unwanted guests, was I wanted to create a poem that encompassed that what we've been talking about, that compounded darkness that we have, all those internal struggles, just kind of popping in to say hello every now and then. And I wanted to create it in a way that it wouldn't just relate to service members. I wanted to write it in a way that everyone could relate to it, because everybody has these issues at some point in their life. And the whole point was, like it starts out in the beginning, who invited you, the worst of friends, as you slowly creep into my head. It's to show people that all of these things are common. All of these things happen. The poem goes on to say later, that if you're going through all this stuff, you're not alone. And it talks about how the world around is crazy, and you don't understand how no one else sees that, and why is it this way. But as dark as that poem gets, and we both know it's pretty dark, at the end, it's supposed to, the whole design was to bring you to that dark place and then have somebody there to reach in and pull you out. That's why it says at the end, see, I know your pain and I know your fears, because I've lived through these for, same thing for all these years. And the end, after talking about all this darkness, all this feeling lost, the ending ends with that. Even though you feel lost, get those thoughts out of your head. Please believe when I say you're not better off dead. Sometimes we need to hear that. Just like how sometimes when somebody is in that dark place, they need to hear somebody ask, are you going to kill yourself? Right. And that's what they always teach us whenever we're talking about like helping people, is you don't beat around the bush. Right. You attack the problem head on. This is the same concept, only without me calling somebody out. It is a passive way of me bringing you into that dark mind state. And that was the whole point of the poem. You didn't know you were going to go there, but I made you think about it. And it brought you there, and the emotions started coming out even though you didn't want them to. And then once you hit that nasty pit low feeling in your stomach, and you're like, I hate this, I don't want to read this anymore, then you finally hear it. I know all of this because I have all of this. And you know, for that first time for some people, and I have talked to people who have read the book, and my book has been the only thing that encouraged them to talk to other people. Or I know somebody who handed the book to his wife and like just said, I'm going to work. You want to know what's wrong with me? Read this. And I talked to him last week, and he had told me this, and I was talking to his spouse too. And, you know, it was a great thing. But, you know, I made you think about it. I didn't make you confess anything. But then I gave you that empathy without you realizing it, without me having to be there, because I made you get to this dark place. Now you're in this dark place. But now I'm telling you, I know, because I've been there. I'm there with you. And even if we've never met, the hopes behind that were to be able to establish a link between, you know, me and the reader, that I'm here for you. I might not be physically here, but right now in this moment, you now know I know what you're feeling right now. And now that you know that, I want you to listen to me and understand that even though all of this is going on, I promise you, do not listen to yourself when you say that you shouldn't be here anymore. You know, the world is brighter with you in it.
So how do your life experiences shape your writing style?
I would probably say that a lot of the stuff I've dealt with is very extreme and very emotional. So when I write, I try to be as raw and extreme sometimes as those situations. I feel that when speaking in public or when writing, a lot of people tend to, you know, reshape the story or reshape their words just so, you know, that they can connect with a bigger audience, or so it seems more cosmetically pleasing to people. That's not why I do what I do. That's not what I'm here for. I'm here for the nitty gritty. I'm here for the raw. And that's what I want. I want to provide constant, like raw, deep material that people aren't usually accustomed to seeing. Or if I go speak in public, nobody's used to a guy getting up there and going, yeah, me, that's me. We're here talking about people with suicidal ideations. I've had those. Let me tell you about those times. We're not used to that. It shocks people. But at the same time, the whole point of the book and the other stuff that I'm writing is to connect with the reader on a level where they feel comfortable and encouraged to either now try to connect with somebody else or at least seek that help. But if I believe personally, if you're not raw and you're not truthful and you're not just, you know, point blank with it, it won't have that effect. So I want to continue to write that way because I feel like being raw and being very direct is a very different but easy way to open a door that a lot of people typically leave closed. Because I'm not asking you to be vulnerable, right? I'm putting my vulnerabilities out there, and then essentially I'm extending an olive branch to you to either join me in this or at least just hear what I have to say. And I think that that's one of the most powerful things, especially when you're talking about mental health or resiliency or people that are struggling with suicidal ideations or any of that stuff, is instead of trying to force somebody to address an issue or force somebody to say something, allow them to make the first step, to make that first move. Because when you allow somebody to feel like they're the ones that are doing it, you know, they'll be way more prone and way more open to actually trying to heal, to actually trying to talk about it. So I'll write the way I write to kind of just open that door. And then it's okay. Now, when I go with my speeches at the end of my book, I always say it's okay to not be okay. And please, if you're struggling, reach out. And if they do, they do. If they don't, they don't. I'll still be here for them. I hope everyone else in their life will still be there for them. But at the same time, taking that approach where you can allow someone else to feel like it's them making the decision and you're not forcing them into it. I think that's like one of the major keys, especially when you're talking about like men to open up. Because if you ask any man that, you know, is stubborn and was told their entire life to suck it up, hey, what's wrong? They're gonna be like, ain't nothing wrong, and there could be tears coming down his eyes, and he'll still tell you he is fine. But I've seen in person when you talk to that same person and you open up about yourself, and you can see it in their eyes that the stuff that you're saying is hitting home, and there's a reason why it's hitting home, right? They're not just, you know, somebody who's, oh, this thing is, no, it's hitting a nerve. And then you just kind of, you either sit there in silence and be there with them while they're processing it, or you'd be like, well, you know, that's what's going on in my head. This is what's going on. Have you ever experienced that? And I'm just asking. You could say no. But now I'm leaving that door open for you. And I feel like that is powerful. And that is a key that a lot of us don't realize is a way to get a lot of people to open up. And I feel like that tool, that mixed with knowing empathy will get you, you know, 100 miles farther than sympathy. But then also understanding that sometimes people aren't ready to talk and you can't force it out of them. And the best thing you can do is be there for them in that moment. Let them know you understand, say nothing, and then let them know, hey, if you're ready or when you're ready, I am right here.
In your work, what themes keep recurring?
So if you're talking the book, most
Yes.
of it is linked to post-traumatic stress disorder. And then a lot of family stressors, especially with the new work that I'm doing. A lot of family stressors. We tend to, when we see service members, when we see first responders, when we see people in those high extreme jobs, we tend to focus on that stuff, like what happens to them in combat, what happens to them on the job. We forget that that's not the only hat they wear. So I've noticed that I've done a lot of PTSD, a lot of combat stuff, because that's a big thing for me. I want to put other people who've never experienced it in that mindset. But what I've leaned towards now, because the key to saving those people that are hurting is getting family and friends on board. So, and sometimes those family and friends don't understand that the actions or the things they say really make a difference or are very hurtful. I wrote a poem recently that's going to be in my new book about a spouse who just kept telling the service member, I wish you had died on that deployment. But that's a thing that people have said, that has been said. And so I wrote a poem, and it's a long one, and it's deployment after deployment, and it just keeps being said and it keeps being said. And then the service member takes their life. And the whole point of that poem, and it is dark and it is sad, it's not like some of my other work, is to get people to realize how dangerous words are, even if they're said and words out of anger are the most dangerous, because 90% of the time we don't mean them. And you don't realize what those things will do, especially to somebody that's been compounding stuff and bottling it up for years. Right? That might be the one thing that they didn't need to hear that pushes them over the edge, right? And that'll hover. And sometimes that's what happens with us too, especially if you're struggling. You could hear all these positive things, but that one thing from that one person that you like admire or you care about might just stick there, and you won't hear anything else. And I've really started shifting my focus towards that, showing the effects of family, showing the effects of, you know, I've been talking with a lot of military fathers because I'm working with somebody right now to construct a book about being a father and in the military. And that kind of stuff, just the overall world of a service member or veteran, because everyone separates the two, but these people are also mothers. They're, you know, fathers. They have siblings. They have all these things. Some of them are single parents. There are so many factors. So I want to kind of incorporate that as well.
So tell us about this other piece here, Alarm. Tell us about Alarm.
So Alarm was the first poem that I had written. And like I said, it was because of that college project. What I wanted to do was showcase to people the monotony of battle and war, but also how service members are forced to compartmentalize in order to survive without actually saying it. So, of course, the poem starts with the alarm going off, and this service member is on QRF with their platoon, and they go through the motions, right? The service member says, I get up from my bed, I put my boots on, but then what happens is the area that they are residing in gets hit with indirect fire, and the service member gets knocked down, and their ears are ringing. They can't see anything. Everything is, there's dust everywhere. Everything's fuzzy. And then it says that all they saw was the hand reach out and pull them out the door of the building. And then they got through the door. And then another round hits and the hand's gone. Right? Service member gets up, goes outside, goes to where they're collecting so they can get a head count, so they can go do things. And then that person sees their best friend on the ground, gone, and realizes that the hand that pulled them out, that when they were disoriented, when everything was gone, the hand that reached out and saved them, in the process of saving them, lost their life. Their friend is gone now. And from there, it kind of goes through the mindset of what happens now. It talks about how the eyes fill with tears as he cries out his name, wanting reply, which of course never came. And then the process of packing up the belongings, and anybody who's been deployed understands that that's another battle on its own. You got to go back. Yeah, you got to go back. You got to pack up their things. You got to put the letters away. You got to, if there's blood on the gear, you got to burn the gear. You literally have to set the gear on fire and burn the gear. And you have to do all of these things. And then it talks about having to sit there on the HLZ and watch your friend in the bag who just saved you get into the helicopter. But at the same time, it talks about how not one word was said. You didn't say anything. You just sat there. And then how they all went back to their barracks, this area that was just, blown up and whatnot. And all they did was they cleaned up and they laid back down and they tried to go to sleep. But, after they closed their eyes, in that silence, the alarm goes off again and the poem ends. And it's supposed to kind of convey and showcase how, because people always say, like, well, how is it? How does it affect people? How is it that bad? How are they having all these issues? Well, right there in a simple poem, I just showed the heartbreak, the absolute heartbreak, the struggle, the trauma, right? The pain of everything, but also the monotony of it. You're not allowed to sit there and be upset. You're not allowed to sit there and process it. You're not allowed to grieve. You don't have time for that. Because if I sit there, or he sits there, or someone else sits there and grieves the loss of a friend, that's another person that's not in the fight right now.
Yep.
So you have to ignore it. Anybody who's been trained in military and any other, if there is a firefight and your friend gets hit, your first thing you're supposed to say to them is, can you fix yourself? Can you apply first aid? Your first priority is to keep shooting. You are trained to ignore everything and keep doing your job. Because if you don't, now there's two weapons not in the fight. There's two people not in the fight. And if you get distracted, if you allow your mind to slip for a second, it can cost you another one of your platoon mates, right? And no one wants that, because losing somebody in a fight, doing what they signed up to do is one thing. Losing somebody else because you made a mistake, That's a whole nother game.
Mhm.
But I wanted to show that. I wanted to show people, because a lot of people just don't understand how do people do that? How do they put it away and just not address it? Compartmentalization, even though it's dangerous, has become a tool through the military without them telling us to use it, because we don't have a choice. And that's why we have that the compound stuff that just stacks and stacks and stacks, because you spend 9 months, 12 months, 15 months overseas, and you are not allowed to address any of that.
Not at all.
Yeah. The most dangerous spot, I tell everyone, is that 30 days of leave when you get back from deployment,
Mm-hmm.
because you just went from being busy for the last 9, 12, 15 months to having nothing to do but sit there and think about all the other stuff. And I made that mistake. A lot of the times where I was in a really bad space, like in my head, was during those breaks from deployment. Because now what? Then I start thinking about things. I start thinking about what happened with this guy. I start thinking about what happened with this guy. Sadly, on some of my deployments, we had service members accidentally shoot other service members. No one in my group, but people that I knew,
Mm-hmm.
right? And one of them passed away because of it. But I didn't address it at the time. It was when I got home that I really kind of thought about it. And the anger that comes with that, and a bunch of other stuff. And then other situations where on my first deployment, my platoon was swapped out with another platoon for a mission, and on that mission the other platoon got hit bad. And it wasn't, it's not my fault, it wasn't our fault, we got swapped out. But I used to tell myself all the time, and it wasn't because I'm partial to my platoon. The people in my platoon were just different. And I kept telling myself, if it was us out there, it wouldn't have happened. Everyone would be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that just that kind of stuff. And anybody who's been in, I know you've served, you know this.
Yes.
And that is just what we do. But like I said, you can't address it. So alarm allows somebody to see and kind of fully understand how there could be so much in somebody's head that they're not talking about, that could just pour out all at once. Because a lot of times when people do start opening up, people be like, well, where's this coming from? And I wanted to showcase something that shows that, but then also shows that monotony behind it too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and everyone's like, well, he's detached from everything, he's just a robot. Yeah. Well, you kind of have to be. All right.
Right.
Yeah. It's like, all right, hey guys, you got to go back to sleep, because if I don't go to sleep, even though this guy's gone, if I don't go to sleep, tomorrow I'm not going to be awake. I'm going to fall asleep. And depending on what your job is, if you're a gunner, you need to be awake. If you're a driver, you could get everybody killed if you fall asleep. It's like, you don't have a choice.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to show that. I wanted to show the whole process. I wanted to take someone from the beginning where nothing was wrong, bring them through everything all at once, and then show them at the end how you just start over like it never happened.
Mm-hmm. Let's transition over to your entrepreneurial journey. How would you describe your entrepreneurial philosophy?
So I'm a little different, because I started all of it with the idea of, I don't care if I make $1. I just want to help people. And I had to shift that over time. I'm very happy to say at this point, I have been involved with 27 preventions of suicide, between first responders, service members, active duty, guard, reserves. I have been contacted through social media outlets, or I've done like a speech at the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. And then I give out pamphlets with my number. I'm like, if you don't want to talk to anybody, you can talk to me. I'm not a doctor. I'm just going to listen. I'll give you some advice on what you should do to go seek help, but I'm not going to tell you how you should process that, how you should feel about it. I'm just an ear. And now that I've hit that 27, I realized I do need to make a little bit of money in order to keep helping people. So I have now shifted it. And my philosophy at the same time, I didn't want to change. So I've always kind of pushed myself to make as much of a difference as I can in the process of while also getting out there and doing my other things. So if I say I get booked for one of my motivational talks, at the end, without them knowing, I slide in a little mental health stuff, and I just give some advice, or I'll sit there afterwards. But my whole goal and what I put behind my business is that as we rise, as I rise, as people that work with me rise, we bring everyone else with us.
Yeah.
Nobody gets left behind. And I've been doing that with, I've been on a bunch of military podcasts, and it's amazing to hear it from these guys. But I've had a buddy of mine who left his job and went and did a podcast, and now he is a veteran coach, and that's his job now, full time. And I was like, man, you are so brave for doing that, and I'm so proud of you. And he said to me, it was you. And I said, what do you mean it was me? He goes, I saw what you were doing. And he said, and I no longer wanted to do the stuff in the police work. I got tired of the mental health stuff, because he was a Marine prior. Because I got tired of the mental health stuff. I got tired of the stigma, and I wanted to start making a difference. And I saw what you were doing, and you were going out there and doing, and it just made me want to push. And I've heard that from a couple different people. And what I've been doing is, as I've been going up, and they've been reciprocating, I'll pull them up with me. If I meet someone new, they meet somebody new. And that's kind of been my philosophy. Is cool. If I can make this a profitable thing and I can make some money, that's great. A big thing that my business does is, like last year, we made roughly a little over $10,000, which, for an author and a book and just barely starting out, last year's when we started, but I donated $15,000. So I did a whole post at the beginning of this year where I told everyone, I was like, hey, thank you so much to everybody. And I just wanted to announce that we are $3,000 to $5,000 in the red. And I know that sounds crazy to everyone else, but to me, it doesn't, because I didn't do this because I wanted to make money. I did this because I saw a need in the world and I wanted to help people. I'm tired of getting that phone call. I know you've probably gotten some, and I know you're tired of them too. Every time my phone rings and it's an unknown number, I'm worried that somebody I served with 10 something years ago isn't here anymore. It's happened so many times that it's just, I hate when my phone rings and I don't know who's on the line. I'm tired of it. So when I constructed the business, I wanted to kind of keep that and push that forward and move with it.
So what was your first venture, and what did it teach you?
So I partnered with Warwick Cares out of Warwick, New York. And I didn't realize who I was partnering with at first, but it turns out I met this woman named Judy Bautista because I was published in a newspaper article. Service member writes a book about all this stuff. It's a big deal. It's not something we normally talk about. And what I had done is I drove all the way from Georgia up to New York to do a special walk in their town, an event. And I finally meet this woman. It turns out that her son sadly took his life years ago, but there was a connection between the two of us that I didn't know. Her son went to high school with one of my older cousins that I'm very close with. And immediately, right, this being my very first event that I did, I was like, okay, I'm right where I need to be. Because not only is this something I'm passionate about when it comes to service members, but this was a civilian. And I just met this mom who's out here trying to make a difference. And I actually know this family. I knew them, but I didn't. And I was like, okay, that was, for me, that was a sign. And I got up on stage and I talked for 30, 45 minutes.
Wow.
And I didn't think, people were going to listen. I didn't think people were going to care, but there was not a single person that was speaking when I was speaking. There was not a single eye in the crowd that was dry by the time I was done. And, this being my first time, I didn't know what I was really going to do. I don't like writing scripts. I like just being genuine.
Mhm.
So, being there, I was like, all right, well, we'll just tell them exactly what I'm feeling in my head. And I did. And in that crowd was also members of my family who have never once heard me open up. And, for them, it was an experience as well. So I think doing that and seeing the reaction and then getting to meet people and hearing their stories really, solidified what I was doing and then pushed me to keep going. And then from there, I ended up partnering with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention and the National Alliance for Mental Illness and a bunch of other big, large organizations, even the International Rotarians. And I've been working with all of these groups now who all are just genuine people who have either sadly suffered from mental health themselves or have lost someone because of it. But it is really, driven my purpose. Because, like I said, every single day, if I told you that I'm 100% better, I'd be lying.
Mhm.
But if I need to, if there's a day where I'm searching and I don't know why I'm getting up in the morning, right? Say everything else falls through. To know that the things that I'm doing and the things I'm saying and the people I'm working with is making a difference for somebody. That's all that matters. Because at the end of the day, I think that's what almost every person wants, right? Is to matter. And to have a business venture that is in that realm, and it's not just about making any kind of money off something or trying to sell you a product, but hey, I'm here. I'm here to talk to you.
Mhm.
I have these things. You could buy them. You could not. Most of the stuff I do, if I come in person, is most of it's free.
Mhm.
And then I bring merchandise that I sell like with me, but I'm not here for that. I'm here for this. And I think that is really kind of geared my the way I do my business and the way that I've do all of my venture, because the people that I have met are some of the most genuine people that you could like come across.
Mhm.
And I connected with them on such a level that I was like, this is what I want to do. I'm not a nonprofit organization. I'm not any of that, but I can do more than an average person. I can give back. I can do this. I can be there for others. And so as long as I'm able to do that, that's what I'm going to keep doing.
Mhm. And so, and when we spoke, I mentioned that we do Black History 365, and I asked you who were the most influential person or persons on your life and your career in Black history. You mentioned Nelson Mandela, Maya Angelou, your father, and Martin Luther King. So, can you tell us how has Nelson Mandela's legacy shaped your views on resistance and reconciliation?
That's a great question. I think with all of them, they're all very much prime examples of not accepting the norm.
Mhm.
Like if you look at the history, every single one of them, and I didn't really realize them until you started putting them all together. All of these people were people who like put their foot down and said enough.
Mhm.
And that's kind of what I do with what I'm doing. I try to break the stigma in society. I try to break the stigma in, the mental health realm. But I would say that what I've seen from him and everything that he has done and just his work is that if you believe in something, if you have this drive, and it is something you truly believe is worth, standing on a hill and dying for, then you need to do it. And no matter what comes, what happens, and look at everything that happened to Nelson Mandela. No matter what happened, this man stood on his principles and refused to accept the norms, refused to be silenced, refused to let anyone tell him that the stuff he was trying to do, wasn't going to happen, wasn't going to do, or wasn't going to come to fruition. And I there's just pure strength in that. And I think that all men really admire some kind of strength from somebody else, right? A lot of our heroes are always somebody who's strong, right? That's why boys like Superman, Batman, all. But to see that, and the same thing with Dr. King and all of these other people, even Maya Angelou, who was just such a prolific writer, to see, social norms and, society saying this and other people telling them this is how it's supposed to be. And to see these people, take a stand and say, I will not back down. I will not listen to what you have to say. I don't care. This is wrong and we need to fix it. That kind of courage and bravery and determination was just something that just truly kind of inspired me. And I think that, those people out of the community, I know I'm shooting for the stars with these people I'm pulling, because these are like the big names. But when you think about it, almost every person in the Black community these days that is making a difference, making a change, going out there, they tie these beliefs, these roots, their drive with one of these names, like 9 times out of 10. There's a couple other big names, right? But like I said, speaking is what I do. Writing is what I do. So, of course, Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King, Maya Angelou, these are writers. These are speakers. Of course, that's where I'm going to take a lot of my drive and motivation from, because I thrive in words, right? And I absorb words. So reading and listening, I always admired, it wasn't his words, but Nelson Mandela quoted a beautiful poem that's also used in the movie Coach Carter, if you've ever seen it, which is, what is our deepest fear? Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond all measure, right? It is not our light, but it is not our darkness, but our light that most frightens us. And it just goes to show you, Nelson Mandela did that in his speech. And I know a lot of people like, oh, these were his words. They're actually not. They're the words of a beautiful, beautiful poet. But that kind of communication and the fact that words from these people echo throughout decades and have the full effect. Like if you hear someone say, I have a dream, there's one person and only one person that comes to mind, even if they're not even talking about that. But if you hear, I have a dream, and that it's just that kind of stuff. And just like I said, their courage and bravery is just something that I extremely admire. And, I personally believe that if you want to make a difference, you should strive to be like these people. These are the people. I always tell people these days, especially like my younger, especially young Black men, when they tell them, I'm like, hey, who you want to be like? And they'll tell me this and that. I'm like, you got your priorities messed up. And they're like, what do you want? Because people will list like, oh, back in the day it was like 50 Cent and this and that. I'm like, and I'm not dogging these people. You could live your life the way that you want to live, but why not Dr. King? Why not Nelson Mandela? Why not Maya Angelou? Why not these people, right? These people who, instead of filling the world with hate, because none of them were hateful people, even though they had, all the right to be. Instead of filling the world with hate, instead of violence, they filled it with compassion, understanding, and then they stood their ground on their beliefs. And I honestly believe if we had more of that in society, instead of all this hate and all, just so much these days, everything, nothing's going to fix itself overnight, but things would get better, right? We could have intellectual conversations. We could have disagreements. You might not believe in something I believe, then that's fine. But because people are, giving all this admiration to different scopes of people instead of true actual leaders, I believe that, things are askewed.
Maya Angelou's words live in the soul. How have they guided yours?
Oh, that's easy. One thing with Maya Angelou and her writing, I've always said that she there's no hiding any of her emotion in any of it. And I do the same thing with mine, like I had said, the raw. So taking from her work and reading some of her stuff, and I'll do that. I will read other poets and other writers' works when I'm like in a slump and I don't know what to write. So that way I can, kind of re-spark the flame, if you will, get inspired. But her form of writing, her style, and the fact that you could feel everything is what I strive to put in mine. And I would probably say when it comes to writing, she is probably one of the most prominent influences for me, because she kind of gave the perfect example and portrayed the perfect image of what happens when you put your soul on paper for the world to see. And also the fact that she was absolutely fearless about what she put there, whether or not she thought people were going to agree with it, or if she thought people were going to receive it, she did not care. And that is just something that I thought was just pure strength and something that I wanted to work with.
So what lessons did your father pass down that live on in your work today?
My father's always been somebody who's told me that if you have the ability to help somebody, you help them, regardless as if, they're ever going to return the favor. Be there for the people that need it. I try to do the same thing with my kids. Like, for example, when my father would take my brothers and I around when we were staying with him, sometimes he would see somebody who's homeless on the side of the street. Right. I remember when we were young, we were riding our bikes to a bagel shop, and my father, we left, went back in, got something, gave it to the man, said nothing, and my dad got back where we were on our bikes, and he was running, and he looked at all of us and said, "Boys, don't you ever judge anybody. You have no idea where they are in life or what got them to that situation. Just know that if you have the ability to help somebody, help them. Don't ask questions, just help them." And, you don't realize how influential that is as a child until, fast forward to 2025, earlier this year, I took my son to a donut shop. And we were getting donuts for home. And as we were driving in, I did see two homeless people with signs asking for food, not money. And I went in and I told my son, I said, I want you to go up to the counter. I want you to order 2 croissants and get 2 there were vitamin waters from the fridge. And then I said, "Do you know what they're for?" He goes, "No." I go, "We're going to give these to those 2 people we saw on the road." And he told the workers at the donut shop that's what we were doing, and they actually gave it to us for free. And my son was only 8 at the time, so this is very impactful. And he's like, "Dad, why'd they do it for free?" I go, "Because you're doing something good for someone else, and because you're doing something good for someone else, someone's doing something good for you, and that's how this works." And then I left him in the car, of course, because at the end of the day, I'm still a father. I don't know these people. And it was on a highway. So I walked over and I gave them the things, and I came back and I told my son in the car, "Why did we do that?" And he said, "Because it's good to help people who need it if you need to, if you have the ability to." And I said, "That's right." And you can only hope that if you ever need help, somebody will be there for you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's always been a thing. And then the other thing that I think stuck more than anything, well, my father being a boxer and also being a soldier, and then later on being a corrections officer, if you have the ability to protect those who can't protect themselves, do it. And that's always stuck as well.
So Martin Luther King Jr. stood for justice. How does his dream speak through your journey?
I would probably say mine, yes, there's still, of course, a racial difference, and it's getting better and then it's getting worse over time. It's kind of a fluctuation, but I say that I would stand similar on the grounds of the mental health stigma, right? I am that weird voice. I have been told like that, you should stop. I've been insulted by people that I've served with. Nothing too crazy, right? Just like, how could you get out there and say this? Or it's not, it's against the norm. And he did the same thing. Now, I'm not saying I'm anywhere near his caliber or anything like him, but I admire that when he saw that something wasn't right, regardless of, what it would do to him, his career, his life, he refused to, let it stay the way it is. And that's kind of where I'm at now. I don't care if the military told me tomorrow, hey, you're done because you keep going on and you keep talking about this stuff. And in reality, I'm just talking about stuff that happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is my story. I'm not sitting there saying, oh, the militaries are terrible. I love the military. I just wish that we had, a better system in place. But to sit there and stand on that hill, even if I'm by myself, and say, hey, any veterans know this, they know it, but they won't say it. System's been broken for far too long.
Yep.
And people have been medicating themselves with alcohol, or the government's been medicating veterans with meds, just over medicating for simple things that we could address and try to fix. But then what happens is they're on the meds for so long that the meds cause more damage than the original damage. And then, these guys or gals try to get themselves off it, and it's catastrophic because now they're reliant on this stuff that they should have never been put on in the first place, because all it really took was for someone to actually sit there and go, okay, let's get you some help, and, not wait 9 months in the VA for this doctor to open up for something. And people will tell you, oh, well, there's all these organizations out there to fix this. There's this and this. It's cool. Why aren't we doing it where it's happening? Why are we being reactive with this? Why aren't we proactive? Oh, we are. Cool. Sorry, but the Master Resiliency Training Program, it's not working.
Mm-hmm.
It's never worked. If it worked, we wouldn't have lost as many people as we've lost in the last couple of years. What people don't realize, and I hate 22. I hate that number, because somebody somewhere said, hey, on average, 22 veterans take their lives every single day. And human beings, we are creatures of comfort, and we are creatures of habit, and we like being in the know. And here's why I say the number 22 is dangerous. If I told a group of people, 22 people are going to take their lives from the veteran community every day, and then the next day I say, today, 22 people. The next day, today, 22 people. Well, I told you that was going to happen. So it doesn't bother you. It should, but it doesn't, because it was expected. What I like to tell people, I like to bring up, is that system in that way is broken. And if you look at the numbers from 2022, in 2022, reported by the DoD and the VA and all first responders across the nation, 7,278 people within the veteran, active duty, and first responder communities took their lives. Almost 8,000. That's a small town, and gone in a year. And that was 3 years ago. They haven't fully published the other numbers. I pulled these numbers straight from DOD and the VA. But when you go and you say that instead, people are like, "Oh, that's a lot." And I was like, "No, it's not a lot. It's the exact number that you've been told for the last however long you've been hearing it, 22." But everyone forgets that's also an average. One day it could be 47. One day it could be, but on average. So, like I was saying with the system, I do this. I try to do the same thing. I recognize that there's an issue, and I recognize that a lot of people aren't stepping up and saying anything. So, just like with him, where he decided I'm going to be the voice for this thing, I'll put my face out there. I'm trying to do the same thing. I will die on that cross. Like, fine, you want to come after me for it? Come after me for it. But before, you finish with me, I'll be damned if I don't see some kind of change.
So, in closing, do you have any words of wisdom, encouragement, for our audience? Would you like to tell them how to connect with you on social media, your website, some of the things that you're doing, how to buy your book? If you could give them that information, I would definitely appreciate it.
Absolutely. So I can be found Alexander R. Stewart on Instagram, Alexander R. Stewart, author and speaker on Facebook. You can reach out to me on email if you need to, which is literally just alexander.r.stewart12@gmail. The book, Unspoken Words, The Thoughts of a Soldier, is available online at Walmart, Target, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, or directly through me. If you reach out to me and you want an autographed one, I don't charge anything. I'll just sign it and then I'll mail it out. Just because, maybe you need me to put a personal message in there, and I won't tell you what it is, but you'll get it. In closing words, I would probably say that if someone is struggling and they were listening, or they're going to listen or listen in the future, and they hear this, there are people that are struggling the same as you, but sometimes they just don't want to say it. So it's important in those moments where you feel that you are alone, that you understand and recognize you're really not, especially like in this specific community where I'm talking service members and veterans and first responders. There are thousands of people who have seen similar things, who have been through similar things, and they might just not be talking about it. But there are people that are out there that understand. And I promise you, there are also people out there that care. Those people that wore that uniform with you, that, walked through those sands with you, that towed that line with you. I promise you, they'd rather listen to you for 6 hours on the phone, talk about everything that's bothering you, than get a phone call saying that you're not here anymore. And then with that being said, it's okay to not be okay. And we need to come to grips with that as people, as a society. Not every time you're going to be 100%, and that's fine. You're not always going to be happy. You're not always going to have a grip on everything that's going on around you. It's okay. We need to stop telling ourselves that, we have to be good 100% of the time, that we have to have a handle on our lives 100% of the time. Life is chaotic. It's managing the chaos. That's the key. And what we can't do is allow ourselves to slip into that mindset where we start saying all of this is messed up because of me. There are so many external factors that we just don't see that could be putting you in this situation. So if you are hurting, or if you know someone who is hurting, I encourage you to reach out. Remember that empathy, not sympathy, will work and bring you miles of progress instead of inches. And then also understand that the simple act of just reaching out and letting someone know you're there, a phone call, a text, you have no idea how much power something like that can actually have on somebody who is struggling. So I always encourage people, reach out to somebody you haven't talked to in a long time. someone you care about that might just forget or might have forgotten that you do. Just let them know. Hi, how are you doing? Are you all right? I just wanted to reach out. That one text, that one phone call might be the thing that kept that person here.
So I would like to, I thank you for spending this time with us. And I, first of all, want to just ask you, I would love to have you back on the show, if you could, because there's a lot of questions I didn't get a chance to answer, but I got to tell you that this was very, very impactful. And I really enjoyed, well, all the shows are authentic, but the authenticity about the military part, I think that is something that a lot of people probably that don't understand now, I think, can feel a whole lot better about that situation and knowing a little bit better about how to be relatable to people that are veterans or people that are struggling with the PTSD part. I want to thank everyone for watching the show tonight. This was more than just a show to, just to mention some things that people may be going through, but it's the advocacy part of being human and reaching out to assist or to help someone that's in need. We should all be thinking about reaching a hand out to help our fellow man. And I have to give Alexander an enormous amount of credit, for the message that he has just brought tonight. It should ring loud around this whole entire world, because there are an enormous amount of people that have most likely not just missed that message, but they don't know that message. Tonight, they got that message. Now it's time to do a call to action. Let's get out there and let's be there for our fellow man, because everybody, in some shape, form, or fashion, needs someone to be there for them. For those of you that have not yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, if you would please lend us your support, and please go to the channel, subscribe, and get all of the notifications. I would definitely appreciate that, because your help is our help, is everybody's help. Let's do it together as a community. And just a word of note, for those of you that may have missed, our initial magazine, AMIBW, was released on August 1st. It's an online magazine. With that magazine, of course, there are links, not just for the magazine, but there's also links to join the community in order to get the magazine. You see it across the ticker here as it's going as well throughout the whole entire show. I would appreciate those of you that have not done that yet, if you would please go and join the community, because the community itself is about community. That is, we're building networks where people that are entrepreneurs, people that want to be entrepreneurs, you will learn things from other people. You will get a chance to expand your business. You get to know other people. And we come from far, far apart all around this globe. Let's do it. Also, inside this community, you can also, once you join the podcast side as well, you'll be able to watch the show from the podcast inside the community. So therefore, you're always there and you're always meeting other people, which means we're expanding the network, we're growing our community, and we're doing what we need to do to build our community in the best way possible. I want to thank you all. I want to thank you again, Alexander, because you were definitely wonderful, and we're definitely looking forward to having you back. And I want you all to have a great night, because we will be back again tomorrow with another outstanding show. And in closing, thank you guys for watching America in Black and White, where we're coloring conversations on America's canvas. We will see you tomorrow.